recording this because this could be the last thing I'll ever say.
Hello and welcome to Paul's Garage Film Review. It's that time of the week again when I'm going to talk you through some of the films I've been watching this week. Right, first up this week we have one I've been wanting to get my hands on for a long time. It's finally got a decent release. It's Berry Gordy's The Last Dragon. Berry Gordy you might know best as the founder of Motown Records. This is a martial arts film he made back in 1985. Big commercial flop, but has become a massive cult favourite in the preceding years. Now, first thing to say about this one is it could not be more 1985 if it tried. It's less a time capsule of the year it was made than a day. It's just a smorgasbord of 80s-ness, break dancing and ghetto blasters and neon lights and dry ice. It's a real spectacle. The thing that makes this film, and one of the reasons it's become such a cult favourite over the years, is the villain. His name's Sho'nuff, and best described as a mix between Old Dirty Bastard, Rick James, and Ming the Merciless. It's the closest I've ever seen to somebody acting on crack. He just eats up every scene he's in. He has this gang of goons that are always going around with him, and he says stuff like, am I the prettiest? And the whole gang will go, Sho'nuff! And he'll go, am I the baddest? And the whole gang go, Sho'nuff! It's just bananas. He's not the main character from the film though. It's this guy here. He's the crazily titled Bruce Leroy. He's like an acolyte of Bruce Lee. Bruce Leroy's in New York on instructions from his Kung Fu master, and he's trying to obtain a special power known as the Glow, and he has to fight Sho'nuff to get it. It's a great movie. Everything you look for in an 80s cult flick. Gets the highest recommendings from me, The Last Dragon. Right, next up is my new obsession. Got this one a few weeks back. Birdemic, Shock and Terror. A lot of people say it's the best, worst movie ever made. Follows a software salesman who meets a model who works for Victoria's Secret. They go away for the weekend and stay in a motel and consummate their relationship in a really creepy, horrible scene. The next morning they wake up to a birdemic, really slow build up, and I mean a really slow build up. There's a scene at the beginning of this thing where he's driving somewhere, and it's done from the perspective of the driver, and it must go on for about 10 minutes. I don't know if they were just filling stuff out or what. But when the birdemic starts, by God does it start. The birds are able to spit acid, and when they fly into stuff, they just explode in a big explosion. It's never really explained how that happens. The CGI in this thing has to be seen to be believed. I really do believe you could make a better film on an iPhone. Never once did the characters actually interact with the birds, because obviously they didn't have that expertise with the effects. So you see the birds in front of everyone, like flapping their wings, and the people going, but there's never any interaction between the actual bird and the people. It looks like 6 or 7 birds just on a string, just flapping their wings endlessly. Great scene where they find the first weapons that they can in their hotel room, and coat hangers, swinging them around trying to hit these CGI birds. But then luckily they did have some submachine guns in the car, which they start using shortly after. I'd expect a salesman and a Victoria's Secret model to have that sort of weaponry on deck for when needed. Just a crazy thing. Damn entertaining though. You will be transfixed, probably for the wrong reasons, but never seen anything like this. Sharknado, much more sort of tongue-in-cheek, ironic. This thing doesn't seem to have any irony in it at all. Hitchcock's Birds was made in the 60s, and his effects then are a million times better than this. It's just crazy. It's well worth a watch if you're a fan of cult, obscure Stuff Like Me. Really good disc of it as well. Got loads of extra features, commentaries by the director and stuff. Top marks. Birdemic. You'll never look at birds the same way again. Right, next up is Unfriended, just out this week. One of my films of the year so far. Really original one, this. The whole film is set on somebody's desktop. It's a Skype chat that's going on the anniversary of this girl Laura's death. The girl Laura committed suicide after a viral bullying that went on, and an exposure of a really nasty video on YouTube that's shown her on a drunk night out. She ended up in an alleyway, having messed herself, and it basically ruined her life, and she later committed suicide also online. The kids involved in this Skype chat are all heavily involved in the bullying in some shape or form. Somebody appears in their Skype chat with no picture on their account, and no one knows who it is. That no one can hang up on this person. This mysterious person that the kids first believe is a hacker reveals secrets about all the kids involved in the chat, and post stuff up on their Facebook. So you see it all happening in real time in front of you, which I thought was a really original concept. Yeah, uses Skype, uses Facebook, uses FaceTime, all that stuff. Even the soundtrack of the film is tracks that the girl whose desktop we're seeing is selecting from her iTunes to play at different points throughout the film. The kills in this are really, really good. My favourite involving some hair straighteners, and another one involving a mincer. There's no fat on this thing at all. It builds up the tension really nicely throughout. Keeps you transfixed. A bit like Paranormal Activity did with the single camera shot, and every little noise and every little creak became important to the viewer. This does the same thing with the technology. Like, you know, every time the Skype phone chime comes on, it's kind of eerie and spooky. I think director Leo Gabriazzi was trying to make some social commentary with this film, because no matter what happens throughout this film, none of the kids turn their computers off. That's quite a clever point I think he's making about people's inability to turn away from their computer screens. I also sensed a little bit of contempt for the kids that are subject to this movie, especially with the hair straighteners down the throat killing scene, which is excellently cut and shown just after a shot of the victim with a duck face, looking like girls do on Facebook nowadays. Really good film. Like I said, one of my tops of the year so far. Did something new with horror, which is rare these days. Definitely recommended. Right, next up, it's an Albert Pine film. Albert Pine's quickly turning into one of my favourite directors of this type of thing. He also directed Cyborg, AK Slinger, and Mean Guns. Some really great cult stuff. Really interesting concept, this one. The main character, Brick Bardo, is the toughest cop on his planet, Arcturus. To cut a long story short, he's sent to our planet alongside his nemesis Sprug, who's a floating head. The catch is, though, that on this planet, although he's full-sized where he comes from, he's only 13 inches tall, hence Dollman. Actor Tim Thomason, who plays Dollman, is awesome in this, really channeling Eastwood's Dirty Harry. Also features an early performance from one of my favourites, Jackie Earle Haley, who I loved in the Nightmare on Elm Street remakes and Watchmen. Really throws himself into this, even though it's obviously B-movie fodder. If you like this one, I'd also recommend this, which I bought with it, Dollman vs Demonic Toys, which is a cross between two 90s film franchises, and a lot of fun as well. If you like Cyborg, Albert Pine's masterpiece, then you'll definitely like this. He's got a unique style of all of his own. An excellent double feature for a whiskey-fueled Friday night. Recommended. Right, next up is another find from our beloved Poundland. This one's called Brooklyn's Finest. Not sure how I missed this one the first time round. It's directed by one of my favourite directors, Antoine Fuqua, or Fuqua, I'm not sure how his name's pronounced, but he directed Training Day, which is one of my favourite films of all time. Don Cheadle, Ethan Hawke, Richard Gere and Wesley Snipes, interesting cast. Very post The Wire, you can tell that they'd obviously been influenced by that. There's one big problem with this film that totally took me out of it, and that's Don Cheadle playing an undercover cop. Don Cheadle is not convincing in this role. The first time you see him, he looks like somebody who's just gone to the market to buy a gangster outfit. That he's wearing a leather cap that looks like it's just out of a plastic wrapper. He's wearing combat trousers with his shirt's tucked into the combat trousers with a big belt buckle. It just looks like you would imagine an undercover cop would think like a gangster would dress. I wasn't convinced for 1 second, and this guy's meant to have moved himself up into the upper echelons of New York's drug cartels. Every piece of street dialogue he does, you can imagine Don Cheadle sitting with his vocal coach being spoon-fed them, and just really not convincing at all. I was totally taken out of the world as soon as he entered, really. Real shame, because Ethan Hawke does one of the best performances I've seen him do. A really grimy performance from him. He's a corrupt cop who's needed to make money, but for quite a noble reason. His wife's pregnant, and they've got dry mould in the flat, and it's affecting her health quite badly, and he's even worried about losing the baby. So that's why he's trying to get as much cash together as he can very quickly so he can move out. Bit disappointed with this one, because I was expecting a New York Training Day, which it's not. I don't think I'll be giving this one a recommendation, not even for £1. It will just leave you wondering how somebody who made a film as good as Training Day was able to make this, and Don Cheadle, you ruined it. Right, I'm afraid that's it for this week, because I was disturbed halfway through filming of my blog by one of my friends, Kevin, who popped in for a cup of tea, and I ended up chatting to him for an hour. I hope you enjoyed it. There'll be a full length one up next week, that's what she said. Have a good rest of your weekend, everybody, and keep watching films.
The city I once knew.